Hi BookTube and welcome to a new video. This is Daisy's Green Light book tag. Don't know who Daisy is. Originated by the boys at Strip Cover Lit. I was tagged by Shawn The Book Maniac. Links to both in the show notes below. It is a tag about books that you've bought and forgotten that you own. So basically, every book up here I've read. So it's not that I've forgotten that I own them with a view to reading them, but there are plenty I've forgotten having read them just because I can't remember a thing about them. I mean, this collection goes back about 30 years, something like that. So there's plenty of books here that I can't remember, but it's going to be a scavenger hunt element to it because I'm only going to remember that I can't remember them when I locate on them. So let's start with one of my women's shelves. Jenny Diskey, Monkey's Uncle. Cannot remember for the life of me what that's about. Deborah Levy, who sadly recently died. That's the only one of her books I've read, called Beautiful Mutants, and I cannot remember a thing about it. The Scissor Man, I do remember. That was a very good, surprisingly good book. Sort of one of those books out of nowhere, which is based on a sort of Caribbean folklore figure who was a murderer. Malefice is a book about 16th century witchcraft. That was very good. Mind you, if I stop on every single book, we're going to be here all day. So I do remember all the Jeanette Winterson books, so I can pass over those. Haven't read much Margaret Atwood, Carol Shields. Gosh, yes, I used to read Carol Shields because my wife read her, and I sort of picked them up after she finished, and I enjoyed them. They're sort of quite cosy family stuff, which is not normally my type of book, but I did enjoy those. The Story of My Teeth by Valeria Luiselli. Note to Shawn the Book Maniac, she has written previous novels to the one that's just been longlisted for the Women's Prize, and very good it is too. Quite a kooky book. And up here, The Room, obviously, who could forget that? Marguerite Duras I read last year, so Women Talking, which is in my top 10 books of last year, so I pretty much remember all of those. Saffron Fur, yes, I remember those. Ben Marcus is one of my favourite authors, so obviously I remember those. You Were Wrong, Matthew Sharp, and Stories from the Tomb, Matthew Sharp. I don't really remember what they were about, but I read the short stories first and liked them enough to buy one of his novels. Can't remember what they're about, sorry. Gas, Elemino Pete, which is a brilliant Aleppo novel. I've got a dedicated video to Aleppo novels. I shall post the link to it, and that includes a review of that. Because this is sort of my postmodern in the loosest sense shelf, I do remember all of these. What's this? Oh yes, Mr. Overby is Falling. I've talked about that before, about a serial killer. Quite a disturbing, unsettling book, so I do remember that. Okay, on to my second women's shelf. This is the more modern women's novels, which tends to mean I'm going to remember them because I would have, being more modern, I've read them recently within the last couple of years, apart from Julie Myerson, I'd read that a while ago. Marge Piercy, Women on the Edge of Time is a time travel book. Yeah, I think I remember all of those. Jenny Erpenbeck. Again, I do like showing these. Jenny Erpenbeck's first books. Pause when I try and get them out. These lovely little... I love books. I actually would like one of my books to be that size. It's almost like a sort of collector's book, like the Observer Book of Birds, or one of those sort of kids, sort of guidebooks or something. I love that format. I do think Jenny Erpenbeck, her first novels, those two little ones I showed you, were her strongest, and she's sort of got less and less enticing to me as a reader. Okay, this is mainly... I don't know what the logic of this shelf is. Anyway, Encyclopedia of the Dead, Danilo Kis, can't remember much about that. Imre Kertész, a Hungarian author who was very demoted a couple of years ago. No, sorry, not Kertész. It's the one next to him. Sandor Marai was very demoted. I read Fateless last year, which was about the Holocaust, and managed to be a book about the Holocaust that didn't move me in the slightest. It just didn't read credibly at all. It's bizarre because obviously the Holocaust, writing about the Holocaust, doesn't sort of follow any sort of logic or level of credibility or reality that we're used to. But that book I don't know, it just didn't work. Peter Handke. The Afternoon of a Writer, Repetition, The Left-Handed Woman, Across. What's this one called? Anyway, the point is I remember none of these. I remember the style, the postmodern transformation, the gold... Okay, so I think that's a critique book of him. I remember his style very well because it's definitely sort of postmodern, but I can't remember what any of those books are about. Auto da Fe, Strictly, I would have to own up. I've only read the first third of that. It's sort of a bail, so I do remember the third I read, but I don't remember the 2/3 I haven't read. Klima's books from the Czech Republic just before, when it was still sort of part of the Soviet bloc. Brecht, Faber, I do remember all the Faber books because he's one of my favourite writers. Calvino, I remember. Yuri Herrera, who's an author that's recently come to our attention, very good too. I don't know if you can see at the top that, and Other Stories, who've released all 3 of his novels. André Malraux, The Way of the Kings, a book I've talked about quite a lot. Bulgakov, Master and Margarita. James Joyce Ulysses, which I haven't read, but I haven't forgotten. I do know that I own it. All of this stuff is non-fiction, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Whoever Fights Monsters was a very good book on psychology of serial killers by a guy who tracks them down. I can highly recommend that. Into the Science, Dawkins, Jones, etc, etc. Okay, so that's that compartment. Not too many I haven't failed to remember. Ian McEwan I remember, for better and for worse. David Peace, I will remember all of his books because they are so, unique in his style. Tom McCarthy, also one of my favourite writers. Tom McCarthy, time for a new book, please. Hornby, do I remember? Yeah, his books are a bit sort of basic plots, so I do tend to remember them. Will Self, now. The short stories, Grey Area and Other Stories, and Dr. Mukti and Other Tales of Woe. I remember 1 or 2 of the stories, but I certainly couldn't say I remember them all. Neil Bartlett, one of my favourite writers, I definitely remember his. Same Scarlett Thomas, remember all hers. I'm sort of surprising myself, really. All the ones that are sort of horizontally stacked on top I read last year, so hopefully I remember them all. Okay, Chromos by Philip Alpha. I remember that was a real sort of slog to get through, and I sort of remember bits of it, but I'm not going to read it again. HHHH, Seventh Functional Language, 2 of my favourite books. I definitely remember them. Book of Chameleons by Jose Eduardo Aguiloso, which is from Angola, and hand on heart, I don't remember, I'm afraid, what that book was about. Saramogo, I remember. Javier More, Your Face Tomorrow. I think I've only read a 1/3 of that. Bailed. So don't remember the second 2/3. Hwelbeck, obviously I remember. Murakami, yeah, I do remember. Well, Hardboiled Wonderland and the End of the World is in my all-time top 10, so I definitely remember that. The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, I seem to remember, takes place down a well a lot. I do remember that. Life of Pi, yeah, I can't really forget that. DeLillo novels, I remember them all. Yeah, I'm going to remember all of these American ones, I think. Mind you, having said that, A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius by Dave Eggers, I remember the title. I don't really remember what the book is about. Joseph McElroy, Ancient History of a Paraphrase. I bailed on that, one of my few bails, and yeah, unfortunately I do remember what it's like. Who have we got down here? Chris Cleave, Incendiary. Well, you can't forget Chris Cleave's Incendiary because it starts off with a professional football game at Arsenal football ground, and a terrorist bomb goes off and blows the head off the Arsenal centre forward Robert Van Persie. So you can't forget that. John Lanchester, Mr. Phillips, Fragrant Harbour. Now, Mr. Phillips, I don't really remember that. I remember David Mitchell's books again, for better or for worse. American Purgatorio, John Haskell. Don't remember that at all, I'm afraid. Yeah, I remember my Jonathan Meads, Rupert Evan Morrison, who just writes about sex a lot. I remember that. Rupert Thompson, yes, I remember that. Stephen Knight, Alphabet City, I actually reread last year, so I do happen to remember that. Paul Auster, 4321, sadly I do remember that. I think I ought to actually unhaul that, because look at the space it takes up. I could get 2 or 3 books on this crowded, because I need to show you this stack of books are the books that I've read this year so far, and I need to find space on the shelves, which means I'm going to break up my perfect, I'm going to have to stack them horizontal and start blocking this out, which is a pain. Anyway, where do we get to? Yes, Francois Granther, Lost Bodies. I remember it sort of took place in an Australian desert, which is sort of red soil, but that's it. I don't remember anything else, I'm afraid. Tim Park's Destiny, nope. Can't remember a thing. Bleeding London, Jeff Nicholson. Now this is interesting because I do remember this book, but I didn't remember who'd written it. So that when I picked up another one of his books on a recent browsing session in second-hand bookshops, I bought it on the basis of its title, which is called Flesh Guitar. And then I realised actually I had read something by Jeff Nicholson, which is this. And I do remember this because it's a book about sort of someone wanted to walk down every street in London using the old A to Z, which is what we used to have, an actual book of street maps before you could do it all online and sort of, geolocators and all of that. The Alchemist, Mark Illis, I can't remember a thing about it, though I do remember enjoying it. Skin, Tobias Hill, nope. I think we're in the section of books that I read a long time ago and can't remember. I do remember the Mark Haddon's books, of course. I do remember Toby Litt. The Outsider by Colin Wilson is actually non-fiction. It's what it says on the tin. It's sort of outsiders in literature, sort of outsider characters. Audacious Perversion, Mark Sanderson. Now, I cannot... now, that is a book I've genuinely forgotten that I've owned because there's no recall at all. It's a shame because I want to get it out and I can't. Just to read what it says on the back. American Psycho, yeah, Savage Detectives. The Savage Detectives, I know I've got it, I know I've read it, can't remember a thing about it apart from 3 guys driving in the back around in a car. Not great. Joshua Ferris, The Unnamed, When We Came to an End. Yeah, I do remember both of those. Okay, and onto this shelf. Well, obviously Fitzcarraldo, I remember all of those. So I've read them in the last 2 years. B.S. Johnson, I remember. Yeah, I don't think there's any there that I don't... What's it? Oh, that's Rob Greer. Yeah, I do remember those. Okay, Mr. Pip, I do remember. Didn't do anything for me. Paul Harding Tinkers, I remember I really didn't like. I think I should unhaul that. Yeah, The Devil's Footprint, John Burnside. I've read 2 books of John Burnside, who's really highly touted, and I couldn't see what all the fuss was about. Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, I do remember. Alan Lightman, Eisenstein's Dreams, I don't really remember. I know... Well, no, I don't. I don't remember it. I think I'm going to remember most of these other ones. Some of them I only read last year. Long Take, that was on the Man Booker shortlist last... Oh, there's the other John Burnside book, Lister. Yeah, I remember those. Again, Solar Bones, there was a lot of buzz about that last year. It started off brilliantly and then went nowhere. And that's sort of it. That's sort of my fiction section. So, not a bad strike rate. Would I reread any of the ones I said I couldn't remember? No, I don't think so. Okay, so there you have it. That is my Daisy's whatever tag. Okay, till next time.